for the meeting, you're all welcome.
Welcome, Chair. Thank you.
But we, Chair, we are really struggling with the network in the parks. So I think that is also a problem.
Yeah, no, it's quite a challenge if you're suffering with network in the parks of Parliament. I'm in the village here. Today I'm very lucky. Remember, I missed most of the meetings last time.
Yeah.
I'll be kicked out of the meeting for close to 20 minutes, and when you rejoin, you can't follow where the meeting is. And next thing, the meeting is over. It's like,
Oh, so you are fine now.
yeah, not today. Yeah.
Yeah, but we really struggle. It's in and out, in and out.
Yeah, we need Wi-Fi in Parliament, man, in our villages. Connectivity is very poor.
iPad.
Hello?
Hello. iPad. Are we still waiting for members?
You're only 7 now.
Oh, okay, I see.
Also, we do make a quorum.
You have to be 8 in order to make a quorum, Mr. Nshabile.
Oh, I'm rushing for this quorum.
Yeah. Okay, so we're waiting for 1 member.
Yes.
No, the network is terrible. Today mine is so good, but there's no water.
That's the one thing that Parliament must look at really, is providing network in the villages, and then to members. Otherwise, how must we do our work? So it's very, very important.
We can, you can't do it at home, but at work, because it's a working environment. It should be, where
Absolutely.
you stay, where you work, must be able to help you to use your tools of
Absolutely.
work. So it becomes a necessity. It's not a luxury.
Absolutely.
It's a tool of work.
It's a new normal. It's a new normal.
It's like paving the road to work. What is the use of having an office and there's no road to that facility? We Other members, I was suggesting that we continue with the meeting, hoping that the last member to help us make a quorum will join us. Yeah, is it okay to take it that way? Otherwise, we losing lots of time. Or should we wait for the meeting to correct?
I think, Chairperson, if I can come in, it depends on whether the industry players are the defense industry role players are available, because we don't want them to also wait too long. So maybe we can start, in my opinion, because there's anyway no resolutions that we will anyway take that requires a quorum. So that'll be my suggestion, and hopefully then other members will join us to make up the quorum, because we've got an obligation to the defense industry role players as well.
Yeah, let's check. So you are seconding this, because I was asking for a seconder for the idea.
Yeah.
That you start the meeting and.
Yeah, that's my qualified seconding of that. Yeah.
Okay, no, thank you very much. Suspect we don't actually need a quorum to take this, because there's not going to be any decision taken in this meeting. I don't think so. That requires that. In the line of that, let's check if there are our guests from the industry, if they are in the meeting.
I've seen, Chair, the majority of the role players have checked in. I've seen that Armscor is in, the SecDef is in, and participants from ADM and RDM, AMD and RDM are here, Chair. And I've seen Mr. Jelle from the NCACC. So seemingly there's quite a number of the role player participants.
Okay, no, thanks a lot. Then I think we should move. There's the agenda, honorable members. Any mover for adoption of the agenda?
I so move.
Will moves. Any seconder?
Yes, Chair, I'll second. Thank you.
Seconded. Then are there any apologies that you received, ma'am, except that of the co-chair that I've talked to earlier? You can also raise it for the record.
There's an apology from the co-chair, an apology from the minister, and an apology from Ms. Bartlett.
Okay. No, thanks a lot. We, like I was saying off the line earlier, that this is our. I missed some of the inputs in these meetings earlier, but I was in the last meeting, and but I've managed to go through the reports and see what are the issues that were raised. And some of the things we agreed upon was that some of the questions raised, answers could not be, all answers could not be given in the meeting. And the commitment was that some of those will be given in this meeting today, and that they will be given also in writing. We're going to look at, I mean, like the program says here, that the overview of the NDIC, there have been previous engagement with the NDIC. There are key aspects that needed follow up from all those meetings, and issues related to the Department of Defense, acquisition project progress, you know, and then the last would be the latest engagements with Armscor and DENEL on acquisitions. we take this industry very seriously because this will help, for instance, in creating more needed jobs. And that if we give our full support to this industry, apart from helping the capacity of the country to defend its sovereignty and its borders again, will be creating jobs and even creating jobs for kids that are doing robotics and other new courses that are being introduced in the curricula in this country. And again, we've got the NDP that also gives us there are a number of jobs that need to be created by different milestones in the NDP, and that this industry will definitely contribute quite a lot into achieving that. I'll give over to the department and to give us the updates on the defense industry role players and the issues. And like I said earlier, you are all welcome. Thank you very much. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. We have our presentation, the Ndic presentation to the Joint Standing Committee. And then there is also going to be a presentation that will be made by Armscor. And then I think that with some of the presentation, there will be slight overlap here and there. But to say, Chairperson, that in our Ndic presentation, what we did is that we also referred back to the questions that were asked in the previous Joint Standing Committee on Defense, and then we tried to provide the answers on some of the issues that were raised then, so that those will also be incorporated in this presentation. I would, Chairperson, if you would agree, invite Professor Moses Kanyile to do the presentation.
Thanks, Chair. As the Secretary has already indicated, the primary purpose of this presentation is to give an update on the initiatives that the National Defense Industry Council is engaged in, and also to solicit support from the committee. And as you rightly pointed out, sir, we really appreciate, as a broader industry, defense industry community, the kind of attention and support and focus that this committee is paying to the industry. Now, if you can page over, ma'am. You'll recall that we reported on the defense industry strategy as one of the initiatives. At the point when we presented, this was not available online. We have since then published it online in the websites of Armscor, AMD, and the Department of Defense. For ease of reference, we've also cited the Armscor website on the screen. Now, in the strategy, Chair and committee members, the strategy covers a whole host of issues, but primarily those issues revolve around 4 options that were presented from the government point of view, what government can do vis-a-vis the industry. Firstly, it was to say that government could actually let the industry die a natural death, which would be uncontrolled shutdown, or help it die, as it were, in the sense that given the circumstances, government could say, guys, look, we cannot sustain you. We have, we've got no means of keeping you afloat. Therefore, let's look at how we can shut you down. Then it becomes a planned thing. So the industry's capacity tapers off to total death or obscurity of the future. But the third one, Chair, is that of securing, stabilizing, and sustaining the industry, which is what the strategy proposes and recommends. That let's look at what we have, secure it, stabilize it, and then keep it going for as long as it is possible, in the hope that in future we'll then develop into the next level, which will be to secure, stabilize, develop, and then sustain. Now, if you look at this particular option, it is very much in line with what the defense review was saying, but also taking into cognizance the fact that the economy is not doing that well. So if we can secure, stabilize, and sustain what we already have, that would be a much better option. Linked to the strategy is the industry master plan, defense industry master plan. Now, initially, this was going to be done through the Department of Defense using a particular service provider, but unfortunately, at the completion of the strategy, the contract that was in place came to an end, and luckily, the Department of Public Enterprises took up the challenge and started working on the master plan and funded the process thereof. But that exercise was fully supported by Ndic and the industry, and I'm sure that the industry is probably going to say a word or two on this aspect. It is a very crucial part of getting the industry back online, but commitment from government is a crucial success factor there. Next page. The next initiative, Chair, is that of the Defense Sector Code. At issue last time we presented was the appointment of the Charter Council. And the SecDef, who is the chairperson of Ndic, undertook to secure the appointment of the Charter Council, which has since been made to materialize. So the Defense Sector Charter Council is now in place. So the process of handing and taking over between the interim Charter Council and the incoming Charter Council is currently underway. The chairperson, the composition of the Charter Council is as follows. It is chaired by Advocate Vuisa Rampele, and we have, it is constituted by AMD, Armscor, Department of Military Veterans, that of DOD, that of Trade and Industry, labor unions, and the Defense Industry Fund, with those representatives. From AMD is 5 members, 3 of whom are women. Armscor has got 2, DMV has got 3, DOD 3, Trade and Industry 1, labor unions 2, and the Defense Industry Fund 2. So in total, the council has got 18 members. Next page. The next initiative is that of a resource-based alternative funding model. What this seeks to achieve is, as we know, that the industry is very much trying to penetrate the African market, but unfortunately the buying power is not so good, but the resource endowment is great. So after a lot of thinking, engagements, and consultations, this model was developed to say, how can we reciprocate or support our African market by providing alternative solutions so that we can sell our military hardware to countries in Africa, but also have a solution as a total package, as other countries are doing. China is doing it. Most of European countries are doing it. The US is doing it. So that's why most of the time most African countries buy from these countries. So this model was developed to say we would sell the items in exchange for mineral-based type of security, which will be processed through banks and all of those things. So what we did was then to engage banks to see if the model is viable, whether it is feasible, does it really make sense from a business and financial perspective, and especially from a regulatory perspective. What they did, Chair and committee members, was to highlight some of the critical success factors that will really make the model work. These included the fact that it is important to make sure that the parties that are involved at least comply with the most basic requirements of creditworthiness and approval, that such countries are not in one way or another, dealing with sanctions, that no sanctions have been imposed on them. Now, as you all know, sanctions can be imposed on the whole country. It can be imposed on a particular jurisdiction. It can be imposed on a particular company or individual. And also, it can be imposed by the UN itself by individual countries. So it is important that when we engage these countries in Africa who want to benefit from this model, that at least as points of departure, there are no issues around sanctions. Obviously, there are concerns around money laundering, counterterrorism financing, and also reputational risk, especially if you're dealing with a country that is controversial or causing trouble everywhere else. But key to this also, Chair, is the fact that the company that is selling hardware, that is selling the defense equipment, wants its money. It's therefore important that the mechanisms for transaction, for getting rid of the commodity consent is clear, unambiguous, and that it is aligned with international law. So the model does make provision for all those aspects. So what is going to have to happen next, and that we'll be working on in the next couple of weeks, is to develop some criteria, specific criteria, which will enable us to pilot this with that particular bank. Next slide. The next one, Chair and committee members, is around designation of small caliber weapons and ammunition. This essentially says, is it necessary for us to buy small caliber pistols from abroad, small caliber ammunition from abroad? Can't we do this thing locally? It can only happen if it is designated for local production. But on top of that, it is important that this is procured at a central level by the government procurement agency, which is Armscor, and it can only happen if there is alignment amongst government stakeholders, and in particular those that constitute the JCPS cluster. And it is very crucial that the decision around this is taken as quickly as possible, because as you all know, DENEL has indicated that PMP is one of those entities that is considering to get rid of as part of its turnaround strategy. Now, that will have serious implications in terms of the SANDF's requirements. So it is important that this is done as quickly as possible. Hence, next month, we will be presenting at the JCPS cluster, whereafter the proposal will go to the minister's JCPS cluster. Next page. The next initiative that Ndic undertook was that of appointing a task team in order to support DENEL in finding solutions around its liquidity and other matters. The task team compiled a comprehensive report which analyzed the situation within DENEL. It made findings in terms of what its observations are, and also made recommendations, which included, amongst others, firstly, that there must be alignment between the Department of Defense and the Department of Public Enterprises, especially at shareholder level. A lot is happening at staff level, but more can be done at shareholder level. Secondly, DENEL needs to be recapitalized in order to take care of a whole host of issues, including matters of credit in terms of servicing its pipeline and also paying its staff. And furthermore, in order to make sure that it can convert its research work into tangible and sellable products. So it will require recapitalization. As the committee members will recall, Ndic was very instrumental in supporting DENEL to secure the 1.8 billion that it did. And as of last year, there was still hope that the other 1 billion that was required would be considered subject to DENEL complying with certain requirements from Treasury. Now, one of the recommendations of the task team was that DENEL's requirements and prospects for growth will require substantial investment, most of which cannot be covered or taken care of through the fiscus, given the challenges that we have. Therefore, we recommended that there has to be some kind of public sector participation in a very structured, transparent way that complies with the national laws and the Constitution in order to get it to the next level. What DENEL has, what DENEL can do, what its stature is globally, is something that South Africa has to be proud of and therefore has to jealously guard against all odds. The next recommendation, Chair, was that there has to be realignment within the very key government structures that have something to do with DENEL, including, for example, DOD and the SANDF. The understanding and the requirements of the DOD and SANDF will need to be looked at and probably be reprioritized in order to make sure that DENEL can take care of those projects that it has, especially because the vast majority of SANDF projects are with DENEL. And also, most of the strategic and sovereign capabilities are consciously and deliberately resident within DENEL. The other aspect, other key structure, a government structure, is Armscor, which as a contracting agent will need to engage DENEL, where possibly there has to be a renegotiation of the current contracts, including the long-term framework between DENEL and Armscor, which will take care of how, especially the sovereign capabilities, can be looked after and maintained. And the other government structure is that of JCPS, especially with regard to security-related items that can be shared across the whole spectrum. The small ammunition, the small caliber weapons and small caliber ammunition are just one of the examples, but there's a whole host of other things. For example, the bullet vests, helicopters. Most of other security agencies do use things like that. Another recommendation was to say, now, despite the fact that that the SANDF is not happy with the delays in some of the contracts, but we are where we are now. Let's be a bit more realistic. Let's reset some of the contracts. Be realistic in terms of timeframes, in terms of arrangements, contractual arrangements. Be cognizant of what skills are available and even manufacturing capacity that is available that DENEL has. So that consideration be given to resetting some of the contracts. Now the industry says it does not help, Chair, that all efforts, all energies, all the money goes to DENEL and forget what needs to happen in the broader industry, because DENEL relies on a very extensive supply chain comprising SMMEs and so on. So there has to be a holistic approach when dealing with DENEL. Now, next page. Now, the challenges in DENEL in terms of liquidity still persist, impacting negatively on the broader SME environment, which is further exacerbated by the COVID situation.
The screen is blank. It's a blank page. If you could look into that. So you may continue.
Okay. All right. I was saying, Chair, that those challenges that DENEL has still continue, and they're also busy implementing the turnaround strategy. Obviously, everybody is aware of the fact that there's some leadership challenges at both board and executive levels that are currently underway. Next page. Next page.
Your pages are blank. I don't see anything on my screen. It's just blank. Do other members see?
I've got no problem from my side, sir. No problem from my side.
I can also clearly see what's on the pages.
I think it's yours, Chair. All of us are, we can see.
Okay, no, continue. What's up?
Thanks, Chair.
Can somebody help me from IT?
Chair, I think the problem is your divisor, your phone divisor.
Okay, let's continue with the presentation as I'm trying to do something.
The next initiative, thanks, Chair. The next initiative is with the Defense Industry Fund, which is a joint initiative of Armscor, AMD initially, and then the DoD, which, as you all know, that banks are not so keen to support the defense industry in general. And that's one of the issues that we're trying to address with the Banking Association. We're hoping to engage them in the next couple of weeks in order to see what can be done to accommodate the broader defense industry. So this was created in order to support SMMEs for purposes of facilitating transformation and also getting new entrants into the market. But unfortunately, the market conditions have not been great, largely because of what is happening within the DENEL environment and also with the pandemic. Next page. Now, having said what we've said, it is important to remind and to reiterate the fact that the challenges in the industry are huge and are getting worse by the day. And this is affecting sustainability. It is characterized by the mass exodus of highly skilled personnel going into areas where we should be competing for market share. And also the fact that in no time the country is going to be unable to sustain the existing sovereign and strategic capabilities that are already here. And all of these are linked to two very important factors. One, it is the declining SANDF budget, especially the imminent closure of the special defense account. DENEL's financial liquidity is another factor because it is affecting its ability to raise capital, to sort out its creditors, and also to service its order pipeline. It relies heavily on the SANDF, as I already indicated. About close to 50% of DENEL's core business is from the SANDF. And Chair and Committee, the issue of the closure of the special defense account is a very serious matter, which is going to be a serious blow to the country from a national security perspective, and also in terms of the ability of the SANDF to manage its projects. Now, with that, the whole defense supply chain will collapse. So Ndic is appealing that the issue of the closure of the SDA be really given another look, because it has got more implications than probably initially thought. Now, if the industry is not able to sustain itself, there will be massive job losses. Many companies will close down, as it is already happening. Highly skilled personnel will be lost to international labor market, most of whom are the competitors or in the defense space. The cost of supporting the SANDF will rise because of forex-based imports that it will have to go into. And also the challenge of maintaining its equipment will become even more challenging. Now, South Africa is a small country, but is one of those countries that is recognized as a defense technology producer of note. And therefore, anything that affects that, it means that standing will be totally obliterated, and it will not be possible to revive it in any way. Because of what we have in the country today was built over many years, and therefore, once it is destroyed, it will be practically impossible to, it will be economically and financially impossible to get it back on its feet again. Hence, there is a proposal that maybe an industry-wide lekgotla needs to be held, but what is key to this exercise is that it should include the executive authority or shareholders from the DoD and the DPE. The strategy that I mentioned right at the beginning promotes the concept of Team South Africa and Buy Local. I think that would be the last input. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much. Is there another presentation? The next one.
Chairperson, there is the presentation from Armscor.
Yeah, in that order. So after the Armscor, the next one should present.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairperson. Our presentation is divided into three. We have the update on the Hoofeester project, Chair. That will be done by Mr. Mkwanazi. And then at our last meeting, there were concerns raised by the industry insofar as the IP exploitation. We will just touch on it to show and demonstrate the current dispensation. That will be done by Ms. Mayema. And lastly, we will touch few slides just to illustrate the open source solution that we had developed for ourselves for the EUCs and related permits, arms control management tool. With that said, Chair, I'll hand over to Mr. Mkwanazi.
Chair, the slides, the presentation was circulated. Can it be shared?
No, I didn't receive the presentation.
Share the presentation.
Okay.
Chair, I didn't receive the presentation.
Did other members receive the presentation?
No, sir, no.
No, we did not, Chair.
We had sent it to Mr. Nkabinde, who had assured us that he will share the presentation, Chair. But we will try and load it.
When did you send it?
I spoke to him this morning. I think the presentation was sent yesterday already. But I will try and load it quickly.
No, and that is problematic because it takes you time to write this document and do the research and respond to questions. But you expect us to see this thing just a day before the meeting when we have lots of other engagements in Parliament and elsewhere in society. So really, this is very inconsiderate of you.
No, apologies.
Honourable members, I just want to take, what do we
Chairperson,
do in a situation like this one?
Chairperson,
Yes.
the presentation was sent to SISPED with all the other presentations.
SISPED?
Chair, I didn't receive the Armscor presentation. I only received the Ndic presentation.
So in the light of this, what do we do, honourable members? I don't want to make a ruling as the chair.
Yeah, my only suggestion is that we must proceed. Can they put it onto the from their side on the screen that we can see it, that we can follow it? If not, it's a bit of a concern.
Other members, any other comment?
Yeah,
Suggestion?
I think it should also be flighted. I agree with Mr. Marais that it should be flighted. Though I have reservations that we cannot do justice to it, because at some point we also do our own homework in terms of the reports. So you don't just read the report and take it as it is. You apply your mind and get more information around the issues that are presented. So in as much as I agree with Mr. Marais, but there are reservations on my part. Thanks.
Chairperson, can I find out why it was only sent this morning or even yesterday? I think the normal procedure is that we must have it at least a week before any interaction so that we can at least do our homework, as Mr. Mafanya said. Maybe Armscor can tell us why it was only sent yesterday.
Maybe you should take the presentation off.
It was sent on Monday.
Guys the right to share. Or who's doing that?
It was sent on Monday. I just got a confirmation from a PA.
Huh?
We've sent it on Monday. I just got a confirmation from a PA.
You sent it on Monday and we haven't received it as yet.
Okay, thank you.
So it is still on its way. What am I supposed to say? Because the person who sent it to did not receive it. And we don't have the document also. Is there any member who has this input?
No.
No one. And then may I just say that maybe we should put this presentation aside.
Chairperson.
Chair, can you hear us?
Yeah, I asked people to talk, and when there was silence, I thought people are okay. Can members raise their hands?
Maybe I must raise my hand, but
that's Mr. Mutley, I think, that's trying
to
get in.
Because I can see Nkosi's hand, Mute. Yeah, Mute and Nkosi, those are the only two hands I see on the system. Honorable Mute.
Yes, can you hear me?
Honorable Mute, it's your time to speak. The floor is yours.
Am I audible?
Yes, you are, sir.
Because I've been trying. Okay. No, it's fine. I was just agreeing to the proposal that was made by Honorable Mare. It was seconded that maybe you must allow them sharing.
Can you remove this presentation, Gunta, so that Armscor can share?
Because they can't type the presentation on the screen, and they must be given an hosting right, something like that, so that they can fly the presentation. Thank you, Chair.
Honorable Nkosi, your hand was up.
Thank you, Chairperson. Greetings to your good self and other members that are present in the meeting. Chair, I don't know, because I can see that the majority is saying the presentation must continue. I was coming to request that let us not deal with this presentation, because we don't have anything. Even if they can fly the presentation, how are we going to follow? Because we'll be seeing it for the first time. Thank you, Chair.
According to me, it's very rude to give people a document now and say they should engage with it, when it took you more days, more than 1 day to compile. One. Secondly, how do we engage with and I mean, generally when people want to hide information, they won't give information on time. We have experienced that before in other committees. I'm not sure about this joint standing committee. I haven't seen anything like that yet. But in the light that other members want us to deal with this matter now, I'll allow them to take us through the report, flight it and see whatever we can do to engage with this. But this should be for the last time. I don't agree with this thing of dealing of engaging in meetings where you don't have information. We're supposed to be making interventions, and interventions are data-based. You can't make any intervention or any meaningful input if you do not have information that you get on time and apply your mind to. I'll reluctantly allow you to give the, to go ahead. No, you can proceed.
Can I, my hand is raised. If I can just add, Armscor should be very much used to how we work at this stage. And they should be very much aware of our requirements in terms of documentation. I think it's only fair that that Armscor, even if it's not now, they'll have to report and write us something on why it was not done accordingly. I agree with all you and the other colleagues. It is totally unfair that we must sit here and only look at the presentation, and we cannot prepare ourselves properly for this meeting. If it was not for the dilemma that the defense industry is in, and the nearly chaos situation that DENEL is in, and the constant, I think, threats of economic poverty, if I can use that phrase, of the industry, I would have said, leave it and come back, that we have it in time. But my fear is that the defense industry will not survive until we get together again. So I think from your side and from the committee's joint committee side, we are committed to assist and to help wherever we can. But it takes two to tango. So really, if the industry's presentation was in, but not that of DENEL, so I'm not happy with that, and they owe us a proper explanation. Thank you very much.
I hate going cap in hand. Let's give over to the team to take us through the presentation. I think this is enough. It's enough for the hypothesis. Over to you, Mnumzane. Over to you. Can somebody help them to fly their presentation?
This really isn't good, Chairperson. Eish.
Come again?
No, Chair, this is not good, the way this meeting is progressing. It's very unprofessional.
What do you suggest?
Well, I think that the presenters must present, they must get on with it. We all here and the clock is ticking.
We can only wait for them to give us the presentation. And if there's any problem, they'll tell us. Are they still on the platform?
Yes, Chair, we are still on the platform trying to get the presentation.
Sure. All right. Let's give you time. Sure. Give you time to set up.
Confirm the email address is DKO.
Chair? Chairperson?
Yes, Honourable Member.
Okay, I thought if in the meantime, if they can't get it right now, can't we just interact with the previous presentation whilst we still wait for Armscor to get their house in order? That's my submission for now.
I think they'll be able to do it in a short space of time.
Okay,
they've got technical people and all that, unless if there's something that we don't know. I think they have the capacity to connect quickly and talk to us.
Please confirm, is it in your sent item? Can you see it in your sent item? No, your sent item. You should have that email. Okay.
Or can you maybe move to the next presentation as they're still sitting themselves? Is there another presentation?
Yes. Refresh.
There we are.
And then another one.
Gunda?
Private.
Gunda?
Yes.
I hear you.
It's one.
Gunda?
Yeah.
That's not a presentation.
Really?
Spet.
hayi olukhona kuyijeke nakunje.
Engineer.
Engineer. Oh.
Hey, Chair, what is happening, Chair?
We're waiting for the presentation to be flighted. We trying to give them enough time to do that, and it's like we're not succeeding. I want to believe that maybe Armscor has a problem.
But Chair, why can't we proceed then whilst they are looking? Then we proceed to, is there not another presentation that we must listen to?
This Pat.
Chair.
Is there another presentation that maybe we can receive when they're still searching themselves?
No,
or should
Chair.
we
I didn't
just go into the?
any other.
I think we
no,
should just go into the discussion of the first presentation, and maybe leave this one for later. Will that be in order?
Yeah.
Agreed, Chair.
Yes.
Honourable members, we got the presentation. I'll wait for a show of hands. There's Nkosi, I see Kubas Marais, Mare, and Vino.
I always carry in if I'm presenting alone.
Yeah.
Now that we gave in a pack, I thought everything is sorted out.
Yeah, in that order, can we give the honorable members some? Oh,
Chair, I'm sorry, I forgot to lower my hand.
okay, you're welcome. Just look, yeah. Honorable Marais,
Yes, sir.
your hand is up.
Okay, so I can proceed. Thank you very much for the presentation.
But I can see this, just wait a bit. I can see there's something on the screen now.
Yeah, from Armscor.
Okay.
So you want us to rather do that, or do you want me to proceed?
No, let's rather do that and then deal with all of them at the same time.
Okay.
With all the presentation. And yeah, welcome again and thanks for reconnecting. The floor is yours. Just take us through your project Who Faced It.
Chair, I can't see the presentation. Can you see it from your side?
Yeah, now this time I can see it.
Chair, it's Dikeledi Maema from Armscor. Mr. Mkhanezi, I've managed to upload the presentation. You can speak through the slides and I will paste the slides for you. Thank you, Chair.
Dikeledi, do you have now the project Who Faced It one? We'll start with that one.
Yes, Chair. I have the consolidated Armscor presentation, Chair.
Thank you. Chair, as I said earlier on, I'll start with the background. After the background, I'll deal with the project status. From the project status, then I'll go to the conclusion. Project Who Faced It provides the development and the production of 264 new generation infantry combat vehicles to replace the current Radel infantry combat vehicle. Chair, originally, the project comprised of 5 different variants. Subsequently, we added another 5 variants. If we look at the slide, you would see that the project has got a common platform with the hull from Patria, Finland, and the turret, which is a different turret for the different variants. It's coming from DENEL Land Systems. Initial hulls were obtained from Patria, and as part of the project, the technology was transferred to the local industry. So there were few vehicles where the hulls were manufactured in Finland, and the rest of the 264, the intention was that the rest of about 240 were to be manufactured in South Africa. Next slide. On the background, Chair, the project development plan was approved in 2006. The schedule, which was the design and development of variants, was to be completed in November 2011. We had a phased acquisition contract, which we negotiated with DENEL for the complete level 5 projects, meaning that the complete system. The contract between DENEL and Armscor was signed on the 21st of May in 2007. After the approval by the Armscor Board of Directors, which was on the 2nd of May 2007. Originally, we contracted to deliver during the period of, meaning that the delivery period was supposed to be 66 months, starting in May 2007 and completing in May 2012. Also, the contract provided for activation of phase 2, which is the industrialization and the production of 238 vehicles. We had the suspensive condition which DENEL had to meet before we move over to the phase 2, which was the achievement of a product baseline A, meaning that they needed to complete the first phase, which is the design phase. We then had the acquisition plan, which was to be activated during the second phase, approved at the Armaments Acquisition Council on the 13th of February 2013. Then we then proceeded to have the phase 2 of the Wolf Easter industrialization and production phase, also which was to manufacture 238 vehicles. The production schedule was supposed to be completed in March 2023. The Armscor Board of Directors approved activation of phase 2 on the 14th of August in 2013. We contracted DENEL for the industrialization and the production of 238 vehicles, which comprised of 5 original variants, which is the section variant, the missile variant, the motor variant, fire support variant, the command variants. As I indicated earlier on, that we added new variants, which was the artillery, basic observation artillery system, as well as the tactical command post system. Then we also had the signal, as well as the ambulance variant. The number of vehicles subsequently increased to 243 in exchange of an advance payment that we gave DENEL. The contract completion date was supposed to be, or is supposed to be, the 30th of November 2023. However, the 1st battalion was supposed to be completed by May 2019, which has not happened. Chair, the current status of the project is such that the contract has experienced delays. Phase 1's completion is delayed by approximately 9 years from the original date, which I stated earlier on of 2012, as it was foreseen during 2007. Phase 2 is behind by 40 months with the contractual production, which is supposed to be completed by the 30th of November 2023. The development phase is not complete, and very little progress is being shown at present due to the number of reasons, some of them which are as follows: the financial constraints of DENEL, the technical challenges to meet the contracted performance, the significant loss of capacity, especially in the area of the human resource, to complete the development and the industrialization. The status and the present completion of the development is as follows. As I indicated that we've got 5 variants. If we look at the common product system, which is the hull turret items of all the variants, we are sitting at about 72%. The section variant, which is the lead variant, it's 83.9% complete, followed by the fire support variant, which is also 83, because they are very close in terms of the similarities. But if you look at the combat variant, it's 72.6%, while the motor variant is sitting at 44.5%. And then the missile variant is at 53.6%. All work of the 5 new variants had to be put on hold. We made a decision that it's better for DENEL to be able to complete the lead variant, which is section variant, the very first one, which is at 83%, with the hope that if they complete that particular variant, then it will be easier now to work on the other variants, especially the fire support variant and the command variants. They've got huge challenges in the area of a motor variant as well as the missile variant, as it can be seen that they are even less than 50% completion. Chair, I'll move over to DENEL challenges. Starting with the technical challenges at DENEL. The development, which is the section variant that I spoke about earlier on, in terms of their engineering design model, it has not been qualified and it has failed several functionalities, and the performance that was supposed to be met by the variant has not been met. During the test where they had in February 2018, there were a number of failures, and they had to rework some of those failures and repeat the test at Overberg test range, which was done in November 2019. Again, they experienced some the failures again during that particular test. And also the other combat variants are further delayed, Chair. If we look at the industrialization phase, the delivery of the phase 2 section variant, which is a pre-production, meaning that after one has completed the design phase, then we do what we call a pre-production phase, meaning that to start the completion of the industrialization phase. The gun and the gun and the vehicle, which is supposed to be at level 5, is behind schedule and continue to slip. The industrialization phase of the vehicle platform hull and the turret hulls, which is done by DENEL to complete the whole system. There are problems in as far as the platform hull is concerned, because that was manufactured by VR Laser and Patria, which I mentioned earlier on. They transferred the technology of manufacturing the hull to VR Laser. And now VR Laser is liquidated, meaning that the whole technology has to be transferred now to DENEL landwards, which also will further delay the project. The industrialization is on hold due to parts shortages, also due to the non-payment of the suppliers by DENEL. So suppliers are not prepared to supply DENEL. There's also the critical point that is also still open, which is the land protection of landmine protection of the vehicle, which is still to be verified. And that has to be verified when we have completed the whole design. We've got a engineering design model, because we need to do that landmine test with the hull combined with the turret, so that now we can see the effect of the landmining on the whole system. If we look at the production phase, the delivery of the first battalion, which is 88 vehicles, that was supposed to be achieved in May 2019, has not been achieved. And also, if we look at the DLS, it's not in a position even to start this phase. So that phase has not started. Now, due to that problem, also even in phase 2, currently, DENEL is sitting at a delay of more than 40 months. Still continuing with the DENEL challenges, Chair, looking at the financial side of it. During 2018, DENEL indicated in writing that they cannot complete the contract in terms of the specification, meaning that meeting all the specified functionalities of the system. They also indicated that they cannot complete the project within the budget, meaning that within the cost that was planned for, as well as the fact that they could not complete the project within the time that was specified in terms of the schedule. DENEL further also indicated that the contract will be loss-making, meaning that they cannot perform the contract within the budget. They cannot fully fund the completion of phase 1. Also do not have the operating funds to execute phase 2. They are also unable to pay the current suppliers and the subcontractors. And DENEL will be able to absorb the penalty, they won't be able to absorb also the penalties which we have levied to DENEL for late deliveries. Now, DENEL will have to cover also the warranty cost of major components that were bought and they are lying in their inventory. And also the fact that they are beyond now 2 years So they have now lost the warranty of the OEM, and that now will have to be paid also by DENEL. We also requested that the contract, they also requested that the contract be reset and Armscor and DOD to absorb the escalation cost beyond the delivery date, as well as waiving the penalties. I might as well indicate that the penalties are now beyond about 200 million rands. I'll move over then to conclusion. During several previous presentations to Parliament, Portfolio Committee, and others, DENEL maintained that the development of the section variant had been completed, meaning that they have achieved the product baseline. Armscor disagreed with the statement, as there are a number of significant technical non-compliance that have not been resolved as yet. During August 2020, consensus were reached between Armscor and DENEL regarding the number of non-compliances to the specification. So what I was presenting earlier on in terms of the percentage completion is what we have agreed with DENEL. So now we have reached consensus. Now they agree that they haven't completed phase one. There are quite a number of still non-conformances that DENEL has to rework and make it a point that the system conforms to those specifications. DENEL was requested to review the technical non-compliance and provide Armscor with non-compliances which can be rectified by DENEL, and also they need to specify by when those particular non-conformances can be corrected. Non-compliances which cannot be rectified, DENEL was to request for change of request in an official process where they need to write to us officially requesting such change, what we call engineering changes. DENEL was to provide new dates and then implication for completing of the development phase. To date, Chair, DENEL has not responded with any further information. So right now we are still pushing and asking DENEL that they respond so that we're in a position to take decisions. And from the look of things, in terms of the situation in DENEL, whereby they've lost the HR resources, the financial situation, from Armscor's point of view, it doesn't look like they will be in a position to meet those requests that I've stated earlier on, Chair. Thank you. I think we'll move over, Chair, to the next presentation.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be taking you through Armscor's philosophy in terms of how we manage intellectual property that is owned by Armscor and the DoD. Armscor is the custodian of Department of Defense IP, and it's responsible for its effective and efficient management. And in doing so, Armscor ensures that DoD IP is identified, protected, and exploited for the benefit of the DoD and South Africa at large. There's a philosophy that Armscor adopts in managing the IP, and some of the components that speak to how we manage the IP is the fact that IP is utilized to drive further technology development, and it is also leveraged to promote transformation in the SADC. There's emphasis on proper control and protection of the IP in order to ensure that the sovereignty of the country is protected, and also that exploitation of IP is allowed for third parties, for members of the SADC to exploit DoD-owned IP. However, that this be done in a manner that is governed properly in terms of best practices, and Armscor ensures that governance plays that governance role. In terms of technology development, Armscor undertakes R&D initiatives in order to maintain existing defense technologies and capabilities, and to foster innovation within the SADC. In this regard, Armscor aims to collaborate with both local and international stakeholders to promote technology transfer between parties and ensure that there's cooperation and collaboration with regards to R&D efforts, especially in light of declining defense budget. The important thing is that in everything that Armscor does in managing its IP, EMEs and QMEs are prioritized, and the aim being that they would be transferred to EMEs and QSEs, which would then allow them to utilize the transfer of the technology that they have received to source funding for them to further develop those technologies and or to maintain existing technologies, thereby participating meaningfully in the defense sector. Chair, the important thing to note here is that this strategy is fairly new and it's really still in its development phase, and it's aligned with the defense sector code. And once it's implemented, it will ensure that there's meaningful participation of QSEs and EMEs within the defense sector. Currently, one of the challenges that QSEs and EMEs have when bidding for defense contracts is access to IP. If you do not have the existing IP to be able to respond to those bids, you are unable to then, as a QSE or an EME, participate in those orders. So the transfer of the IP, which is key to this strategy, to QSEs and EMEs, the sharing of that IP will allow them to participate like big players within the SADC. How the IP is controlled and protected is that the SADC submits, typically the SADC would submit, a member of the SADC would submit an IP exploitation request to Armscor for approval by Armscor and the DoD. The request would be taken through an IP exploitation process, which I will allude to in the next slides. And these are considered on a case-by-case basis. When assessing IP exploitation requests, due consideration is given by Armscor to the financial benefit to the DoD in the form of a royalty payment and or a strategic or sovereign nature of the IP to ensure that we do not alienate IP that could compromise national security. And definitely national security considerations are looked at from all phases. Are these countries that are on a friendly basis with South Africa, and should we be entering into certain IP transactions with those countries? So all those factors are taken into consideration. This is just a high level process that we follow. Typically would start with receipt of an IP request from industry. This is then considered by a team which then negotiates with the industry player that submitted the request. Then a submission which captures a negotiated position between SADC and Armscor is taken to the Armscor Executive Committee for their support, input, and recommendation that it goes to the Technology, Industry Support and Sustainability Committee of the Armscor Board, in short, the TIS. The TIS committee also then provides inputs into the submission, which is then supported and recommended by the Board of Directors to the Department of Defense for approval. Then the process starts on the DoD side. This board recommendation goes into the Chief Defense Materials Office, which obtains support for that IP to be exploited from the user environment. So if the IP was developed as a result of a requirement that came from the Navy, then the Navy would be the user requirement, the user environment, and they would need to provide their support for that specific IP exploitation transaction. And for all IP exploitation transactions, defense intelligence also has to give their support to defense material. Once all of that has been done, defense material then provides final approval for Armscor to then proceed with the study to exploit that IP. In the event that the IP that industry is interested in exploiting was funded by Armscor and developed by Armscor for Armscor, so basically that it's an Armscor's balance sheet, the approval process would stop at the Armscor Board of Directors. This approval process does not replace other requirements like the NCACC approval and all other requirements that are in place for a specific IP that's related to defense to be exploited. The practice, Chair, has been benchmarked with countries such as Canada, China, the United Kingdom, and the USA, even Iran. These countries ensure that there is IP that is owned by its Department of Defense. However, that there is an opportunity for that IP to be leveraged and further developed by the industries in a controlled manner that is governed by an equivalent of Armscor in their countries. And furthermore, the approach by Armscor is also informed by the challenges of funding of technology development that is currently affecting this portfolio. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. The next presentation is about the Arms Control Asset Tracking System, which was developed in-house in 2013. Just as a way of background, during that time, we have faced challenges with the management of the permits which were issued by the Directorate for Conventional Arms Control. We then sought to find an effective system which was going to assist the company to effectively and reliably manage the arms control function. We therefore then set ourselves to develop a system which we termed ACAS, which stands for Arms Control Asset Tracking System. This was developed on an open source platform, IDEMPIA. It is an ERP system. The system is customized to suit Armscor's business requirements. We have succeeded in achieving accurate reporting, reconciliation of end user certificates and permits. We have achieved real-time feeds, and we are able to integrate with core businesses. So the system allows us to manage the armaments development and manufacturing and service permits, the ADMS permits, marketing permits, contracting permits, import and export permits, temporary two-way permits, disposal documents, domestic transfers authorization, and destruction authorizations. Next page. This system has allowed Armscor to report details of all EUCs or end user undertakings. It allows us to have all the necessary details which we require to manage the system. So we are able to report or to even search for all kinds of information, like for instance, the document type, the document number, permit and application reference numbers. So we are able as well, Chair, to track any article which which requires a permit through even the part description as well. Next page. Now, in essence, if we're to develop such a system, generally the high-level activities which we would need to undertake would mean that we'll have to plan the requirement. We'll then go to the analysis phase. We'll then, say design and build. Thereafter, we'll do data management and migration of data. We'll do test and evaluation. And ultimately, because this will affect how the operations in the company are being undertaken, we'll then undertake a change management exercise. And thereafter, we'll train personnel, and ultimately we'll deploy the system. So in all, in order for us to achieve what we've achieved in the past 7 years, a period of approximately 6 months will be required to develop the system. And thereafter, we can safely say that the system is easily supportable as well within our environment. As per the requirement, we believe that if we're to be required to assist, obviously we would have to look at the user requirement environment before we could really commit on timelines and also scope the project in order to determine the actual requirements in terms of resources as well as the cost implications. So this slide to give typically the timelines of such a project if it were to be deployed elsewhere. I thank you.
On that note, Chair, I think that concludes Armscor's presentation. Thank you.
And this concludes all the presentations. Honorable members, it's our turn to engage with the presentations. I just have just one little question that worries me on who works, what are the processes and procedures in, let me say terms of what kind of people do you hire in the industry? And if you get them, do they go through vetting and all this? Because I'm worried about some of the things. It seems like transparency, we've taken it too far, that people are transparent even where things are not supposed to be. People working in the armament industry, where there is very serious competition in that field. And your competitors may also sabotage you to the extent that some of your things do not end up meeting the set standard requirements, and then you end up wanting to export things of lower quality. I'm just concerned. I just want to check if that gets done. Honorable members, there's the report from this report responds to some of the questions that we asked in the last meeting. Yeah, no, thanks a lot. That's and before I even do that, because I may end up even forgetting this, the issue of the document arriving late. I think we'll need a thorough explanation what happened, because you said that the document was sent quite some days ago. And our committee secretary that we've been working with for so many years says that she did not receive anything. So which means one of you is not necessarily telling the truth. But I think we'll need an explanation with this one, and maybe in the next meeting deal with it. May I give an opportunity to members to engage with the discussion? I'll follow the list on the screen using the raise your hand system. There's Dennis Ryder, there's Cobus Marais. And
Mine
then,
is still on from the previous time, so I'm still obviously, hopefully, trying to use that opportunity. Thank you.
Okay, Honorable Mudle.
Who must start, Chairperson?
Oh, Honorable Ryder. Let's start with you.
I thought Honorable Marais was on first, Chair.
No, I thought his hand had been up since that time. So,
no,
so
because
he has lowered his hand.
Yeah, because I started with a question and then I had to stop because we had the Armscor presentation. You remember?
Yeah. So you want to talk now?
Yeah, if I may, with your indulgence.
Okay, no, sure. Go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. My appreciation. Thank you, first of all. And I'm going to start from the defense industry presentation. My first question to them will be kind of on their first, and I think it's point one of their presentation, defense industry strategy. Now, there they're saying government options. And there are 4 options, and then there's a recommended option. Now, my very important question, because that will have effect on a number of other questions following as well. What consultation was there with government? And is this only a recommendation from the industry without consulting with government? Because that puts a huge responsibility and a commitment on government to say that they agree, for instance, to secure, to stabilize, to sustain, because that has got a lot of implications. Because what we know at this stage, and that following on to the DENEL part of the presentation, is that yesterday there was a presentation at SCOPA, and we have seen it today in the newspapers as well, where there was talk that DENEL is currently busy basically with reckless trading. Now, if it is reckless trading, then there's a major problem. We know that DENEL requires major investment, but we also know that in the budget that we have just had from the Minister of Finance, there was no money being set aside for DENEL to recapitalize DENEL. So it is very important. And also in the Department of Defense, our budget, there was basically nothing being added to the special defense account and no money set aside for capital acquisition. So with all of that, are they still of the opinion that DENEL, or let's say solving DENEL, is the right strategy at this stage, given where we stand in terms of National Treasury and the budget, and the presentation that we have now seen from Armscor on where they stand with Hoefyster, and basically that we know that Hoefyster is not a sustainable project anymore, and actually must be cancelled as soon as possible. So why are they so optimistic, and are they not over dependent on the recapitalization of DENEL and the salvage of DENEL, given all these issues that I've now just mentioned? And then I also want to know what the industry has done, whether there's any of that capabilities with DENEL that the industry can take over, even if if we lose parts of DENEL, or because some parts of DENEL might be partly privatized with private investors, but there might be other parts that will be lost to the industry. So how would that affect? And also where they are saying that, the critical importance of the SDA, we agree with that fully. And I think we have been very vocal as the Joint Standing Committee, plus the Portfolio Committee, on the importance of this Joint Standing, of the Special Defense Account. But we see what has happened over the last years, and we have just experienced in the current budget. So, and also then the Lekgotla, the industry Lekgotla, which is a fantastic idea. Has that been consulted with government and the shareholders and the stakeholders? Are there commitments? What are their feedback from the from National Treasury especially? That is critically important, because without that, all of your models might be impacted on. Then, secondly, on the alternative funding model that you have mentioned here, can I just find out, in terms of that, what are the timelines for that alternative funding model to materialize? Because it seems like there's quite a number of steps still outstanding and work to be done. Is this a 5-year, a 10-year, a 1-year? What are the timelines of everything to happen? Because we know it doesn't actually happen so quickly. And what is the actual role in this funding model of government, specifically National Treasury, Department of Defense, Department of Public Enterprises, and then DENEL? And then what if both National Treasury, DENEL, and Department of Defense cannot meet the requirements that has been put into this initiative? How will this affect the sustainability of that? With regards to the presentation of Armscor, the very, very important, I think we have heard about Hoefyster and Chairperson. I think, us as a Joint Standing Committee will probably have to make a decision and a recommendation to the Minister and to Parliament on this, because only based on what we have seen in the past and heard in the past and what we have seen and heard tonight, it seems like the sooner Hoefyster is culled and stopped, the better for everybody, and the least money will be lost by government, money that we haven't got. I mean, there's still a huge issue about the 200 million rand penalties, whether they will anyway be able to pay those penalties. Then, on terms of the IP and the exploitation of IP, we know that in the past, a lot of the IP was featured in the balance sheet of DENEL. And I remember in Pretoria, when we had our Lekgotla with Armscor, they have raised their concerns about the whole position around DENEL and their IP, or actually Department of Defense's IP that they are the custodians of. Where do we stand with that in terms of that IP? One of my huge concerns are the value of our intellectual properties. And often the intellectual property per se is not so valued as those people with the knowledge and the expertise to use the intellectual properties to implement that and to turn that over into products. I want to use an example, and many of you might have seen this, because my interpretation is that there are many experts that worked in South Africa that is now working in Saudi Arabia or the UAE. It seems like there are products that is coming on the market that is very, very similar to the South African product. There might be slight changes, it might be slightly bigger, slightly smaller. But for instance, the Cheetah CRAM system compared to Halcon's air defense missile, which looks very, very similar. And we know that there are South Africans that worked at DENEL on that project that is working at that company in the United Arab Emirates, whether that is making our value, our IP's value, you know, of zero value. Chairperson, then lastly, I want to ask about the end user certificate that has been quickly mentioned by Armscor. First of all, what is the difference between end user EUC, which is end user certificate, and EUU? I suppose that is an end user undertaking, probably. What is the difference in the contractual difference and the practical difference between those two? And then on the end user certificate, we know that there was a lot of complaints even after the regulations were amended, where we have, you know, changed the kind of obligation to do inspections, you know, you know, just arriving there. That is not done, and it must be negotiated via the, you know, the DIRCO side and the diplomatic side. Whether there are other matters of the end user certificate that is still of a concern, because we have picked up in the industry that there are still concerns. The one thing I want to ask the industry, and it's only them that can actually tell us whether there are any concerns. If there are none, fantastic, then it is like they say in a marriage, speak now or forever hold your peace. And I want to ask the specific question, is there anything in the wording? For instance, the wording in our end user certificate that prohibits an importer in an end user country not to either use that in a forward sell or a final product to a third country or a client outside of their country. Is that a concern? If it is not, then fine. If it is a concern, how do we address that? Because we have picked up that specifically Saudi, United Arab Emirates, and Oman, and even Egypt might have concerns with that. Can they tell us about that? Is it a problem? Do we have to be concerned about that? Do we have to make amendments or not? Thank you, sir, very, very much so far. My apologies for my assistant that looked over my shoulder. My apologies.
No, you're welcome. We sharing homes here. We cannot inconvenience people at home. They can't even go through the sitting room. It's okay. Honorable Mutle, it's you.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I'll try to be brief because I think the posturing that we are taking, Chair, we need to correct it, because we are not seeing these presentations or the challenges presented for the first time, but we should be moving from a premise of checking progress in terms of how far are they in terms of addressing those challenges. Like the issue of end user certificate, we have dealt with that particular issue, and presentation was made, and the committee was assured that challenges that emanated from the end user certificate will be addressed, and would appreciate if indeed the defense industry in this meeting can then be able to tell us that that has been resolved, and how is business going on their side in terms of that particular resolve. Secondly, Chair, this goes to Armscor with regard to Project Hoof Ace there. I think the last engagement that we had with them on Hoof Ace there, we have made we have actually raised a question to them to say, is it feasible for them to continue funding Project Hoof Ace there while it's under DENEL, taking into consideration that DENEL has got challenges and they don't seem to be resolving those challenges. It seems the challenges at DENEL are perpetual, they are deepening, and that affects or impact on project who face there. And that impact will impact on the budget of that particular project, or the fiscal, if one may put it that way. How long must we continue funding a project that is way behind schedule, and there is no positive indication that even pumping money into that project will resolve those particular challenges? We can pump as many resources as possible, but seemingly we are not going to see the result. I mean, we can't continue wasting public resources like that. These resources, some of them must be channeled to other national needs, like education and so forth and so on. Project Who Face There still needs billions and billions to be completed, but it's behind schedule. So does Armscor really still needs to continue with that project under DENEL, or alternative? Do they have any alternative means to conclude that project? Because seated where I'm seated, Chair, it doesn't look like we will get project Who Face There right for as long as it's still contracted with DENEL. So my last point on this matter, which is not necessarily a question, will be to say, Chair, can we approach this meeting from, we must not treat them as if their new meeting or new presentation. We must from time to time approach them from a point of view of seeking progress from them, as opposed to pretending as if we hear these things for the first time, and we raise question as if we have not dealt with this presentation before. So it will be much better even when these entities come and present, and they as much as they give background, they must also be able to present on progress made from what we have discussed before and moving forward, so that we don't waste much time even raising issues that have been resolved so far. Thank you very much, Chair.
Saying we should not regurgitate matters that were, discussed and resolved before. The purpose of this is to get responses from the industry about the issues that were raised, and of course DOD has to also make inputs. May I give over to you, Honorable? It's your turn.
Okay, sorry, I hope you said it's my turn. I wasn't quite sure, but thank you very much. Yeah, Chair, I think the reason we asked Mr. Moret to go first is because he gives voice to our concerns and packages them quite well. And I think you touched on it as well, Mr. Mutle as well. Excellent inputs, because the fact is that the issues we're seeing here are not new. And so a couple of things. Number one, the IP, the intellectual property that we're talking about, it's a massive concern, and it's not only overseas that we seem to be losing. I've seen some products from private local manufacturers that are also, shall we say, remarkably similar to stuff that has been designed in-house using research and development that's been funded by the taxpayer. So that's supposed to be kept inside. So I really think there's a massive concern about retaining the IP that has been paid for by the taxpayer retaining it for use by entities within government and quasi-government. So certainly I think we need a lot of comment on that. Moving on to the end user certificates. Yes, I think that, again, we've covered this ground substantially before. And the fact is we were told, no, the new regulations are now in place. Well, there was a very short insert in the presentation, but let's hear, how the new regulations have affected it. Is it still too soon to tell, or have we already seen some developments? And very much as Mr. Mutlia said, let's start seeing, this is not the first time we've been to this this rodeo. Let's start getting some real proper engagement and relevant comments about progress that's being made. Hufeista, I don't even want to talk about. I think that's been well covered. But yes, when do you stop flogging a dead horse is the question. And then the biggest one that I have, and it's the theme that comes up in the presentations is, Defence Force budget is our big problem. Well, guess what? The latest budget has come out and we've seen a massive cut in the Defence Force budget. If you look at the medium-term expenditure framework for the next few years, you can expect nothing but more cuts. So there's not going to be an increase in Defence Force budget. What budget there is already being used to fund an unfunded organogram. And of course, the additional pressure that's been placed by the President with his declarations and his use of the Defence Force in support of the South African Police Service is putting further tension on the resources to be applied to funding on boots on the ground, essentially. So we're not going to see a lot more budget coming forward for the defence industry. So what is Plan B? Let's hear what are the other initiatives that are being undertaken, because the defence industry can't be solely reliant on Defence Force budget any further. Thank you, Chair.
There's Honorable Mafanya. Remafanya.
Thank you very much, Chair. I believe we share the same sentiments with our colleagues, because literally it is true that it's not the first time that we have seen this kind of report. And equally on the liquidity challenges of DENEL, at some point the Minister of Public Enterprise in Parliament alluded to the fact that they've got a turnaround strategy. It will be my submission that at some point we need to know from the Minister what sort of interventions that they got on their part to turn around DENEL, and then with all its challenges, because that is the promise that he made in Parliament. And on the issue of looking for funds where there are difficulties to get funds from banks, naturally in fact, what we do is that we consult with Treasury, not with private banks, because private banks, their motive is just only one, to make profit out of the whole situation. So I would like us to look into it where we have to engage Treasury in certain aspects of the defense industry. And that is about all, Chair, just to look at that. Also on the Defense Industry Fund, where it is mentioned that they also assist the SMEs, so that are BE compliant. The question that I would like to find out from the defense industry is that, are there black players in those SMEs? And then if they are not, then why not? If there are, how far? Because now the information that we get is that there is an exodus of high-skilled personnel that goes out of the industry. Number two, in terms of that again, is that even this high-skilled personnel tend to go to other countries. Now, what is it that could cap the resources that have been spent on training and retraining our people who happen to go to overseas countries, establish companies, and sell the same material defense equipment that we used to have. So how do you cap that? Thank you very much, Chair.
Thanks a lot, Ndate Mafanya. I see 3 more hands. Mutle, Dennis Ryder again, and if you may lower your hands. Yeah, thank you very much. Are there issues that members would like to raise before I give to the industry to respond, particularly to issues that you know they feel that they need to lay emphasis on some things to give us more information in response to some of the questions that were asked, and actually even suggest some of the interventions that they think they need us to do to support them. It's okay to support a cause, but you also need more information and get commitment to those that you are supporting, that they'll also play their part and respond to us in time, on time. And yeah, let me not go there. May I give over to those who want to add some more things and to the answers that they give earlier, in line with my suggestion, the suggestion that I've just made.
Chairperson.
Show of hands. Yes, sir.
Chairperson.
Yes, you're welcome.
Chairperson, can we respond to some of the issues that have been raised?
Come again. I was saying that you may respond to what you want to respond to. If there is more information that you want to give, you also welcome to do that. Over to you, man, if you want. You are given the platform.
Chairperson.
Yes, you may talk.
Hello, Chairperson, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes, we can hear you. We're waiting for your response.
We can hear you loud and clear. Why does she think we can't hear her?
Yeah, Chairperson, it seems like she cannot hear us, but we can certainly hear her very, very clearly.
I think she's muted. I think she muted.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
No, she hasn't muted herself because we can hear her.
Yeah,
but
that's
she
true.
cannot.
But she cannot hear us.
Hello.
Yes, son. Go ahead, man.
Okay. Oh, okay.
You may talk now.
Hello, Chairperson, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes, we hear you. We hear you very clearly.
We can all hear you. We can hear you. We're hearing you well. Can anyone do sign language?
Chairperson, can you hear us? We are not muted.
Yes, we can hear you. We can hear you. We hear you well.
Okay.
Okay. Is anyone from the industry who wants to take this opportunity to respond?
Yeah, yes, Chairperson, with your permission.
Yes, Ndo.
Thank you very much, Chairperson, and good evening to yourself, the co-chair, and other portfolio committee members, as well as our colleagues from Armscor, the department, and fellow colleagues from the industry. I think my point of departure, sir, would first be an apology. We had also made a presentation, but there was a delay from our office in sending through the presentation to SUSPET. So I think it suffered the same fate as Armscor, hence the opportunity then did not arise. But we will, subsequent to this, share the presentation. But if you'd allow me to say, in our presentation, we had responded to some of the questions that are being raised now in terms of the progress since the last engagement with the committee. One of the issues that we had raised when we last spoke to the committee was around the end user certificates and the regulatory process itself, particularly the challenges that we're experiencing with a few countries around the Middle East region. We are happy and pleased to report that subsequent to that engagement, the issue was resolved and we were able to avert disaster by commencing our exports to the Middle East, particularly in Saudi Arabia, UAE, and Turkey. So we managed to save the industry right before the calamity was to befall the industry. And for that, we thank the committee for having granted us the audience, and also Advocate Jelle for having worked with us, ensuring that we resolve this matter. So as we speak now, the matter of the Middle East was resolved. However, we also then just want to emphasize that for us, that region remains a very critical region, and it would be a serious disaster if we were to go through what we went through with that particular region. So there is a positive report that we can table before the committee on that one. Another issue that we had raised with the committee around the regulatory environment was our request for the review of all the legislation and policies around the regulation. We are also happy to report that as of the beginning of the year, around February, the month that has just ended, we were informed by the Secretariat, which Advocate Jelle heads, that the process of reviewing all the relevant prescripts would commence in due course. So we are happy with that process because we are of the view that the regulatory environment, it needs to be strengthened, but at the same time it needs to be made efficient. And we think the review process can definitely assist this, where we can ask for the intervention of the committee. And one of the pieces of law that needs to be reviewed is the Act, the NCACC Act. In our understanding, that is an act of parliament. So ultimately, that piece of legislation will come before your desks, and we therefore urge you to work with us in ensuring that this piece of legislation is reviewed and updated as a matter of agency, because it is an economic enabler for the industry. So still on the NCACC and the Middle East, Chairperson, we have also then started engagements with the Office of the Deputy Minister of Defense, who also indicated that he would bring in the Secretary of Defense into those engagements. And the engagements center around our intention to re-engage with the Middle East, so that we repair the challenge or the damage that had been caused over 18 months when we could not export to that region. So that is a notable development. So we are not going to respond to the master plan issue. Suffice to say, from the industry itself, we view a master plan as the most critical document that we have developed on issues addressing the challenges that the industry is facing. And we are happy that government took the lead in that process. However, there are challenges with the master plan itself. The master plan calls for the establishment of an executive oversight committee, which is yet to be established. And this committee should be chaired by Minister Pravin Gordhan of Public Enterprise. Of course, it's a different portfolio committee from this one, but it would also assist matters greatly if it could be impressed upon that committee that the establishment of this oversight committee is critical. On the DENEL challenges, Chairperson, I think everyone is well aware of those challenges. But another challenge that then the DENEL situation poses is to the master plan itself, because the DENEL is central to the success of the plan. So if you do not have DENEL, the master plan then gets into serious jeopardy. Another challenge to the master plan, Chairperson, is the declining DoD budget. It has been raised. I was disappointed to hear that there is nothing we can do to change the situation going forward, because our position as the defense industry is that we must engage with all relevant stakeholders in seeing how we can reverse the situation, because the continued decline of the budget will spell disaster for all the efforts that we are trying to make. Especially on the SMMEs, our SMMEs will struggle quite a lot. They are already struggling. But another critical impact of the budget is on transformation. You see, the budget is a very central tool that the government has on promoting and enforcing transformation within the sector. So if you get into a situation where government no longer has a leverage, then the transformation efforts that we are embarking upon as a country will suffer a great deal. I will not talk about the impact on research and development because that has already been covered, but research and development is critical for the future. If as the country we are not investing on research and development, then as far as capabilities are concerned, we will slowly be dying, or we will slowly be declining in the areas where we are living. Lastly, Chairperson, there has been some negative media publicity that has been drawn to the industry, and I think this contributes to the negative perception that the industry is currently receiving from the public. I just want to reiterate for the record in front of the committee that the South African defense industry is a responsible exporter, and we have Advocate Jelle to thank for that, because through the DENEL Secretariat and the NCACC committee itself, they make sure of it. So whatever media publications would be saying about South Africa and our disregard for human rights, it would totally not be true, because we are a responsible exporter, and our country, we have been assured and we have seen it in practice, takes human rights seriously. In fact, the challenges with the Middle East were particularly because our government wanted to ensure that when we export to those countries, it was for the right reason. So Chair, these are the issues we just want to bring to the attention of the committee. Progress has been made, and we are very grateful of that. We now see the light at the end of the tunnel, but it is not the time for us to relax as the industry on alternative areas of growth, because the defense budget is the way it is. As the South African defense industry, we've long been saying that our area of growth, realistically speaking, will be in the export markets, because our government cannot consume what we produce. And that has been a fact for the longest of time. If you look at our revenue split, 60 to 70% of what we've been getting as form of revenue has been coming from export markets. So we have looked at that. We do require government support also in that terrain, because we only sell to governments. Governments speak well to each other. So if we are to save the industry and assist the industry to move beyond the point where it's at now, we need to make our export environment more efficient, more export friendly, and we need to get the support of all the levels of government and all the houses and the structures of government. So we are looking at alternative models and alternative ways of keeping the industry afloat, because it's correct. The way the budget is currently, it is not sustainable for our industry. We've had companies that have had to shut down because they are no longer getting contracts from Armscor and from DENEL, which in the past was their lifeline. So we are looking at ways at which we could then sustain those companies. And lastly, post-COVID discussions in the country, you would have noted that the defense sector is one of the few sectors that has never been mentioned in any post-COVID support mechanism of any sort. So we are going to be engaging with the Secretary for Defense on trying to find ways in which we can support this industry post-COVID, just like all other sectors have been supported. So our industry as well requires the support. However, in our case, we are cognizant of the fact that money may not be readily available. So we are saying the level of support and the type of support that we require does not necessarily need to be financial. There are other ways in which our government can support us so that we also get to move out of the COVID challenge that we find ourselves in. Thank you, Chairperson. I just wanted to put those points across and to respond to some of the questions that were posed specifically to the industry. Thank you, sir.
Thanks a lot. That does give hope. Thanks a million. There is a question asked by Honorable Mafanya. That is a question that I think was asked also in the past about, you know that in the past, Black people were not allowed in this industry. They were not participants. I know of, I don't know what has happened to them. There were a group of soldiers who retired from the army, and they were repairing hippos and these military vehicles in Pretoria. I think they were from Garangua. One of them was a former colonel, Ramofolo or something like that. But they stopped getting contract from the Defense Force. And they actually took those contracts, I'm told, and gave them to other people who have been in the market for many years. So the feeling is that by other people, like the retired colonel and his team, that they feel that they are, you know, as new entrants in this market, they are not taken seriously, or they are not considered. And so I just want to know how many companies, maybe this one will be in writing, how many emerging Black companies are on your, are you doing business with, and the amounts involved, possibly, if that is, yeah, I mean, in a way, that is what I want to know. I know it cannot, that information cannot come out now, possibly, but if it's available, give us the info. Yeah, is there any other addition from the defense industry? Yes, over to you.
Thank you very much, Chair. Chairperson, let me start off maybe by the question that was asked by Honorable Ryder, and that is the issue around the Defense Force budget. I just thought that, Chairperson, maybe it would be appropriate that I start by responding to this one, because then it will lead to the other things. Chairperson, in the next MTF period, which is the next 3 financial years, and then starting from this year, that will the financial year that will start on the 1st of April, the Defense Department's budget is going to be cut by 5 billion. And then the following year, it will be cut by another 5 billion. So for the next 3 years, we stand to lose about 15 billion rands from that money. And then also in April, when we start, we are only going to get 1 billion rand that is going to be deposited in the special defense account. And then the past 3 MTF years, we have been, our budget was cut by 18 billion, which was 6 billion over each year. So it means that cumulatively over a period of 6 years, the department's budget has been cut down by 33 billion rands. So that is maybe just to give a context of that. Now, there has been a question that has been asked around Hoofeester. I'm sure the colleagues from Armscor will ask about it, because I think the views that Honorable Mutle was raising are exactly the sentiments that were expressed within the department to say, we have already put in so much money. And I think that the presentation of Armscor has been very clear to say that even the first phase has not been completed. The second phase has not been completed. And this has been running for well over a decade. And that was supposed to be our state-of-the-art combat vehicles. So right now, with the state where our finances as the department are, it becomes very difficult to continue committing money to the project of Hoofeester. So I think that we need to look as to what is it that we're going to do. And I think the presentation from Armscor has properly articulated what the challenges are. Now, if I can also go to deal with the issue of how are we going to salvage the issue of DENEL. The fact of the matter, Chairperson, is that the sustainability of DENEL can also not be divorced from the budget of defense, because right now the Department of Defense has been the biggest client of DENEL, and most of the capabilities of the department have been procured through DENEL. Now, there was a question also that was asked whether the capabilities of DENEL, can they be also looked at by other parts of the South African defense industry. Part of the reason, Chairperson, we were saying that we need to probably, as a country, with all the interested role players, come together and say, how do we salvage this industry? Because with the issue of DENEL, yes, it's a strategic security asset, but also it is a business that we have consciously decided that we must keep it going. So from an economic point of view and from a security point of view, we need to look at how we're going to do that. And I think the previous speaker, Mr. Zulu, he spoke about also the issue of public enterprise. They had also wanted that myself and the CEO of Armscor must come and talk to them about the issue of the sustainability of the industry. And then I think about 2 days later, we received a letter from the minister to say that they wouldn't want to proceed with the meeting because they think that all the other critical role players should come on board. For instance, departments like Trade and Industry, your Department of National Treasury, your Public Enterprise, DOD, and just broadly the South African defense industry, and then say, how do we really deal with that? And that is the forum that we think that we can also be able to look at whether we will be able to get some of those capabilities if then we were to lose them through DENEL. Now, Chairperson, I think that also from the defense side, we have tried as much as we can, because DENEL needs a certain amount of money for them to be able to function from month to month. And we also realized that if we went in and put in more money, it wasn't really going to help in terms of really moving in with the contracts, and for the reasons that I have alluded to. So I think that there is a need for us to come together and say, how do we reposition ourselves? How do we want to rework and have a different approach given the financial constraints that we have as a country? And that's why we were then saying that maybe this is the way to go. So it will assist if we really dealt with it that way. There was a question about the options that were at the beginning of the presentation. This the Ndic is a representative of both government departments and the industry itself. So these options came from the industry and from that forum that is made up of both government and the industry itself. And when looking at various options, that's why we then realized that the best option was the one of the secure, stabilize, and sustain, because we thought that that option also gives us an opportunity for growth. And by the way, Chairperson, the reason why the defense code were there was that, amongst other things, it was also to transform the industry itself and allow for new entrants to play a role there, whether it is black businesses, whether it is small businesses, and things like that. So that's why even amongst the initiatives that you have there, you have the defense the defense industry fund. And that because we know that when you go to your normal banks, they are always very hesitant to fund projects from the security sector. And that's why then it was thought that if we set up a fund, then that fund will then allow those companies, for instance, if they get contracts through Armscor and whatever, and see how it is that we're going to assist them. Yes, it is still evolving, but we think that if once we get started with it, it will help us to really overcome some of the challenges and then begin to address the issue of transforming the industry. And that was the question that was asked by Honorable Mafanya. So, Chairperson, I thought that I needed to add to those issues, and then also just to say that I align myself with the sentiments that have been expressed by Mr. Zungu. So we are also planning to meet with the AMD next week with the Deputy Minister. I'm sure that message has already been communicated. So we will be interacting with them, but we all look forward to this opportunity. And I think there was a question posed to say, is there anything else that we can do? So that then all the relevant role players, if they are there, we can put our heads together and be able to chart the path forward as to what is it that we can do, so that then we create the sustainability, and acknowledging at the same time that yes, there are budget cuts, but also we know that our economy has not grown in the manner that we had anticipated, and it has been made worse by a COVID. So of course, we need to go back to the drawing board and say, how do we then do things differently to make sure that we salvage the defense industry? So those were the points I thought I should raise from my side, Chairperson. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor. Is there any other addition, response?
Yes, Chairperson. Maybe we would like to respond rather to the issue that was raised by honorable members insofar as IP is concerned, and I'll ask Ms. Dikeledi Mayema to give a response.
Thank you, Chair. On the question of whether or not the IP that is on DENEL's balance sheet still has value, given the exodus of expertise that has left that organization. The situation is that IP comprises of different components. The know-how that vests in the developer of the IP is one component. However, you do have documentation that is produced as part of the R&D process, and there's a lot of value in that, because those data packs, when you've properly configured them and you manage them properly, at a later stage when you have a new set of engineers and new experts in the field, they can be trained to then be able to manufacture those systems based on the data packs. So there still are a lot of value in those data packs that are are there within DENEL. And in fact, Armscor is has embarked on a process of trying to ensure that there are copies of those data packs within Armscor, so that if anything happens at DENEL, we still have access to those data packs and they are not lost, because they would go a long way in resuscitating some of the capability and shortening the learning curve for new entrants into the market. And on the issue of the IP being used by the experts that have left DENEL to develop similar systems in other countries, the committee would be aware that there's an SIU investigation that is pending, and that Armscor is providing support to that process in whatever format that it's required. And really, we are also then making our own efforts to try and ensure that the IP that is there is not lost by way of having duplicated data packs within the Armscor environment. Thank you, Chair.
I think that's all from our side, Chair.
Thank you very much. There was a question that I asked about new entrants in the armament industry, in the defense industry. Black people who were previously not involved in this industry. And the same question was asked by Honorable Mafani.
All right. Mr. Mkonazi, and respond to that.
Chair, on the question that you raised in terms of who do we employ, in view of the fact that this is a sensitive industry, we vet our employees. Yes, we do have a process of vetting the employees. In fact, we work hand in hand with defense intelligence, wherein the people that are working for the organization in the defense industry they get vetted, as well as the defense industry. So you tend to find as well in the defense industry that the companies are security cleared in accordance to the kind of work that they are doing, from the lowest security clearance to the highest security clearance.
Chair, on the issue of participation of Black SMMEs in the acquisition space, yes, there are SMMEs that are participating in that space. I think it's important, Chair, just to say upfront that we can do more in ensuring that we do have more Black participants, participating in the defense space. Thank you.
Is it me that's cut?
No, I don't think so, Dennis. I'm also still on this side, but I think it's on the other side.
Yeah, they are all muted. I think the system has kicked the chair out.
Then I propose that you must take forward the lead, Honorable Mutle.
Okay, yeah, let's proceed. I think the platform was given to Armscor to respond to those questions around the implementation of the charter, which seeks to see the industry transforming and including people who were previously disadvantaged. Armscor, you are muted. I think the platform is yours.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks, Chair. You are quite right. The Defence Sector Code is a catalyst ensuring that we foster transformation in the defense industry. You know that in terms of the code, in terms of the second anniversary since the promulgation of the code, it enjoins that, you know, when we contract entities in the SADC, that we have at least 30% black equity ownership. But importantly, what we do in Armscor is that whenever we contract entities in the SADC, we always ensure, where possible, that we subcontract 30% or at least 30% to black-owned entities. We have made strides in ensuring that we actually empower SMMEs, black SMMEs in particular, in both the procurement and the acquisition space. And we normally indicate in our quarterly reports, the Chair, our acquisition spend on SMMEs and other black-owned entities. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Honorable members, I'll get an indication from you. I think that was the last question that was raised through the chair. Is there any other question that members feel that it's not sufficiently responded to, or any follow-up will be allowed? But we must work towards wrapping up the meeting. Honorable Marais?
Thank you very much for the opportunity. Yeah, I've asked quite a number of questions, and very few has been responded to in terms of what I've asked. I suppose some of them is very difficult to give the answers tonight, and if both the industry, the SecDef and Armscor can maybe then respond in writing to those, that'll be appreciated. But it doesn't seem like they want to put their heads too much on the block in terms of expressing views and also responding to those challenges of, for instance, products manufactured abroad that is very, very similar to South African products. And that certainly impacts on the demand for our intellectual properties and products that must be manufactured with our intellectual properties. But as you've said, I mean, it's quite late in the evening. So yeah, I just say things that in terms of that funding model timelines have not been responded to. Also the timelines in terms of Hoefyster has not been responded to. So yeah, you know, I will rest my case, but I think there's a number of the things that if it has been noted down, can be responded to. So thank you very much. Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Thank you, Honorable Mopanya.
Thank you, Acting Chair. Mine is just one simple question. Is there any interaction with the Department of Public Enterprise in terms of the turnaround strategy that the Minister alluded to in Parliament? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'll hand over to the SecDef and to Armscor, maybe to indicate briefly, even if it means you'll have to respond to some of those questions raised by Honorable Murray in writing, you can make that indication. I think they've been well captured.
Chairperson, thank you very much. We also have the reps from DENEL here. Chairperson, let me say that the turnaround strategy initially was developed by the Department of Public Enterprise. And then we then also initiated a process from our side where we felt that the issue of the sustainability of DENEL, let's take it to the bigger JCPS cluster. So we then, Department of Public Enterprise, DOD, and then also National Treasury had then come together, took whatever was the turnaround strategy, and then added some of the issues we had worked on from defense and then also Treasury. So the document that finally came out of that was the product of those three departments. And then from there, we then, on the basis of that, then decided that let's then interact with the whole security cluster to then see what is it that can be done around that issue. And as you would recall, Chairperson, I think that we had mentioned that there's been a lot of interaction around the issue. And I think at this point in time with that document, the ministers were then going to engage at a higher level so that then they arrive in a decision on how to proceed. But right now, whatever document is there is a consolidated document as a result of the work of all the structures that I'm talking about. And even in some of the meetings, we did have the colleagues from Armscor, and we also had colleagues that came from DENEL. I hope that assists, Chair.
Okay, thank you, DENEL.
Thank you very much, Chair. Good evening to you, Chair, honorable members. Yes, indeed, Chair, I would like to support the sector on the issue on the turnaround plan. We had constantly engaged in the past year with regards to that. There are meetings that are planned between DPE, DENEL, Armscor to enable the turnaround plan. So there is a continuation from the original strategy that has been presented to this committee and to the Committee of Public Enterprise. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Armscor.
Thanks, Chair. With regards to the IP or similar products that are being launched in the Middle East, Chair, I think that is linked with the ongoing investigation of the SIU. So I think from where we are sitting as the custodian, as Ms. Mayema had indicated earlier on, that we are, working with the SIU and, offering all the necessary and required support to investigate, because although there might be similarities through a naked eye, but up until you investigate and those matters are investigated, it is rather premature for us to conclude, and we'll rather, allow the SIU, which is they have the investigating powers, to conclude its work. And I think on the basis of that, we can be able to be presented with the findings of such investigations. Yeah. That will be our input. So I think there's little that we can really add at this stage.
All right, thank you very much. Armscor, I'm not sure. Defense industry, do you have want to have the last input?
No, sir. Thank you, Acting Chair. I think we can further confirm that we are also part of a multi-stakeholder engagement on how to save DENEL. So and the public enterprise is part of that structure as well. So we can further confirm that.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, I think I will not allow any other hands anymore. We have taken 3 hours to deal with the items that have been presented, and I think we will not exhaust everything at a go. It is work on progress. There are quite a number of decisions that both the DOD, Armscor, DENEL, and the industry must work together to ensure that they are implemented. For an example, we've been advocating for the relocation of DENEL from public enterprise back to defense, so that at least it will be reporting directly to DOD in order to mitigate some of these challenges. But I know there are still challenges around that, but it's something that SecDef going forward, it must be central to the engagement that you'll be having. If we really want to really salvage the capabilities that you have, because as you have correctly alluded to or articulated, the demise of DENEL will impact negatively on the capabilities of the defense force. Therefore, we must not allow the situation to deteriorate to an extent that the capabilities of the defense will be impacted. I know some of these decisions will require a political intervention and a political will for them to be implemented speedily. We will work together hand in hand with you to ensure that some of these challenges are resolved going forward. And of course, lockdown has impacted on the industry. We would have liked to see more transformation and seeing new player coming in, but we assume that there were no much activities around the defense industry as a result of the pandemic that we are faced with. So yeah, with that being said, honorable members and delegates from Armscor, DOD, defense industry, and DENEL, thank you very much for your availability and participation in this meeting. the meeting stand adjourned.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair.